For those of you that scored, I'm going to remind you again, for those of you that scored below a 78 on your exam one and you haven't reached out to me yet, please reach out to me and schedule a time to review the concepts you missed on exam one. Okay. If you scored above 78 and you still want, Allie, have you, okay. Allie, there's a message for you in the chat. Um, if you scored above 78 and you still want to review your exam, please reach out to me as well. That invitation is open to everybody. Okay, I've met with a lot of people so far, but there's still a pretty significant group between all my four sections that I still want to meet with. And you can talk to your teammates who have met with me. I think it's really beneficial for you to go over the concepts missed in your exam. And then we can kind of sort out what might have happened. Was it a lack of preparation? Was it a lack of knowledge? Was it test taking skills? And we kind of review all that. So I would encourage you to reach out. If you would like to schedule a time to meet with me, send me some days and times that work. Okay. Every day except Thursday afternoon this week will work. Well, we'll sort it out and make it work. Okay. Um, Danielle, did you make it in yet? You're the only one we're missing. Did Danielle make it in yet? No. Okay, so everybody's on camera, right? I can see everybody. I'm not looking at any ceilings. Um, so happy week 6. Can you believe that by the end of this week, we're halfway through this term? Crazy. Absolutely crazy. Okay, so let's see. Amelia brought up a really good point about Labor Day. So we will not be having classes on Labor Day, which is September 4th. I don't know what Dean Brown's plan is, but last term, well, on the terms, last two terms that we've had a holiday, there typically is two options. One is to attend any of my other sections that week. And this will all be put to you in an announcement when I figure out what the plan is. You can attend another one of my sections, just so you know, if you want to write these down, to be thinking ahead. I teach on Wednesdays at 1 o'clock Eastern time. And you may have clinicals, you may have labs. I'm just throwing you out the times. And then I also teach on Friday mornings at 9 a.m. Okay. So there is an evening class on Friday night with Professor Ford, and I think that was offered as an option last term. She teaches late. I have to get you the time. I think it's 8 o'clock, 8 o'clock Eastern time. But I'll have to double check on that. Anyway, the second option is that you tell me you can't attend any of those, and then on Monday or whatever that weekend, I give you an assignment to do. Okay, an assignment with some questions, and that has to be turned in no later than Tuesday. So it'd be on the 5th. Because what we don't want to happen is, oh yeah, I'll come to your Friday class and then you never show up. I'll come to your Wednesday class and you never show up. So if you say you're going to attend an extra class, additional class, you'll be letting me know that, because I'll be sending out an announcement to let me know what your plans are. If you choose not to attend a live class, you'll have to watch the recording, because I'll send out a recording. I'll do a recording for that week. Okay. And send out the recording, and you'll have to do an assignment. So either way, so thank you so much for bringing that up. But in looking forward, Amelia told me that's week 9. So that's good. It's not an exam week, but you also have several things due in week 9. Amelia, what were they? NCLEX, your HESI prep assignment, and what
Yeah,
else?
A case study.
and a case study. So all those still have to be done in week 9. There's no extension on those. This is only for a class reschedule. Make sense?
We
How's
don't
everybody
have
coming?
quiz that
What?
week. We don't have no quiz that week.
Nope, nope. The last quiz is in week 8. No quiz. You have a quiz today and a quiz in, nope, next week's exam week. So quiz today, exam next week, and in week 8. Yeah. Now remember, this is a exam pre-exam week. So you've got 3 review sessions that you can attend. Okay, I'll resend that out if you want after class, but if you go back to your master calendar for all the exam reviews this week, mine is on Wednesday at 9 a.m. Eastern time. Professor Ford's is on Thursday. If anybody wants to pull up that master schedule and we can go through what they are. I know on Wednesday, 9 o'clock a.m. Eastern time. Professor Ford is Thursday, that she usually does hers in the evening. So if anybody wants to, go ahead.
At 7 p.m.
What time is hers?
Thursday.
It's at 7 p.m. Her camera going off.
7 p.m. Eastern time, right? Okay. Mine
Yes.
is that's on Thursday. Mine's at 9 a.m. on Wednesday morning. And when is Professor Kershaw's on Sunday?
At
It's
6
at
p.m.
6 p.m.
6 p.m. Okay, so there's your 3 times. If you want to attend a live review, if you can, try and attend a live review. It increases your scores. It's factual. It increases your scores if you attend live reviews. So you have the 3 dates there. Okay. And you have their Zoom links in that master schedule. All right. So try if you can. I know everybody's super busy with other classes, with family, with work. I get it. You will get you will get all 3 recordings. So you have those to review as well. All righty. How's everybody coming on their HESI prep? You guys, this would be a good week after today to stop if you aren't very far in it, because after today, we've covered all the content for exam 2. Last week, we covered weeks 4 and 5 content. Today, we're going to cover week 6. And that's it. 4, 5, and 6. That's exam 2. So this would be a good time this week sometime to stop and complete whatever you can on your HESI prep. You're probably at least halfway, if not 2/3 of the way, able to complete it. And again, I got asked last week, this doesn't need to be complicated, okay, to fill this out. Remember, this is your study guide for HESI. So whatever information you want in there to remember, put in there. I would like you to think about the nursing process. So for example, if you have somebody coming into the ER with a potential anthrax exposure, just think of the nursing process. What are you looking at? Maybe what they present with, how it's treated, what are the precautions, right? Those are just think nursing process. So if you think about vulnerable populations, let's say you're migrant farm workers. What do you want to know about migrant farm workers? What are their risks? Right? Why is it so difficult for them? Say you're in a clinic and you're assessing migrant farm workers. What would you think about that we've already talked about? What are we looking for? Language barriers, transportation barriers, lack of resources. So remember, this isn't black and white. This is for you. Think of the nursing process, however you want to remember migrant farm workers, however you want to remember pregnant teens. But be thinking nursing process. If you were seeing a patient, what would you be looking for? All right. So remember, I have students that write 2 or 3 sentences. I have students that write 2 or 3 paragraphs. Okay, this is for your study purposes. All right. So that's my suggestion after this week. Go back, go in and fill out what you can, right? Because I think I talked about this in week 1. We're at week 6 now. Things are going to start to pile up quickly if you haven't been working on them. Think about it. Week 8 is, I think week 8 is once you get to week 9, okay, you have an exam, you have your HESI prep that's due. Okay, then we jump into week 9 is the end of content. Week 10, not only do you take an exam, but week 10 we'll be doing HESI review sessions for your HESI. Okay, and you also have an assignment, or week 10 is your vulnerable populations. Okay, each of those assignments in week 9 and week 10, HESI and vulnerable populations are each worth 5%. Okay, and then coming out of week 10, your exam and your vulnerable populations, you're jumping right into HESI. Okay, so it's going to start to get busy in the next couple of weeks. All right, so take the next couple of weeks where it's rather manageable and get working on these projects. All right, I can't stress that enough. It pains me when students come to me in week 10, I can't keep up, there's too much. That's why I've opened those assignments for you to be working on. All righty? I'm just trying to give you a heads up. All right, questions? Okay, let's review our week 10, week 6 content. Okay, we're talking about occupational health, environmental health today. Let me share my screen and bring
I
up our
had a
note.
quick question.
Yeah, of course.
I wanted to know about the HESI. When we completed, how did you want us to turn it in?
Well, hopefully you saved it as a Word document.
Because I printed it out.
Or you can print it out and write on it, handwrite, and then you'd have to scan it. You'd have to scan it and send it to me as an email attachment.
Okay.
There's a place where you can submit it to. You can scan it and submit it.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Okay, so the other thing I want to mention is I sent you yesterday, was it yesterday? I sent you the concept guide for exam 2. Okay, so as you read through your 3 weeks of concept notes from weeks 4, 5, and 6, you'll see that a lot of the information in the concept guide is a review of that. It's a shortened version, obviously, but it's a review of everything we're covering in each week. Okay, again, I will reiterate that if you have a good understanding of the concept guide and you can apply it to clinical questions, you're going to do perfectly fine on the exam. Okay? Okay, so let's start. Occupational health. What's occupational health? Well, actually, I'm going to take a step back here for a minute. I'm going to go to okay, in your module this week, there's an excellent summary in your module of occupational environmental health. So before we even talk about it, what is occupational health? What's environmental health? What is it?
What is it, like outpatient help or something?
On the job.
On the job. Occupational health is all about the workplace. Okay, the nurse who is the occupational health nurse is ensuring safety in the workplace. Okay, on the flip side, well, they kind of go together. Environmental health. Think about where you live. Think about all the environmental risks in your community. You may live near a transportation hub with air pollution. You may live near waterways with potential river, lake pollution. You may live in an industrial part of town. You may live near railways. Okay, think about all the environmental risks we have on a daily basis, both inside our home, inside our school, inside our community, in hospitals. Okay, so let's go through this real quick. If you haven't read this, I'm just going to skip through it. I want you to read through it. Okay, so occupational environmental health nursing, it's considered a specialty practice. So we talked about community nursing has many different roles of the nurse. You could be a school nurse, you could be a faith community nurse, you could be a home health nurse, you could be a hospice nurse. Well, here you could be an occupational nurse or an environmental health nurse. There's just two more specialties. All right, so it involves the nurses, it involves us trying to deliver health and safety programs to workers, worker populations, and community groups. Right? What we focus on in occupational and environmental health, we focus on restoration of health, trying to prevent illness or injury, and trying to have a safe work environment related to environmental hazards. Okay?
You said, never mind. I think I see it. I was
What?
trying to see what you said. The deliver, and I was trying to see where you was.
What we try
Like,
and
correct.
do is provide safety programs, services to workers, worker populations, to try and minimize injury and illness on the job. Does that help? Okay. Here's an interesting fact. Poor employee health costs businesses upward of $1 trillion annually, right? So occupational and environmental health are really important nursing positions within companies, hospitals, businesses, right? These nurses are trying to maximize employee productivity, trying to reduce absent days, reduce disability claims, reduce on-the-job injuries, right? So occupational environmental nursing is a critical part of the care team in
So
these
it's
large.
like so it's like OSHA, somewhat.
Well, OSHA is the one who and we'll get to that. OSHA is the agency that monitors workplaces to make sure you are following the safety guidelines that have been designated. Has anybody ever been part of an OSHA visit where everybody's just flipping out? Yeah. So OSHA is going to come to see you if there's an accident. There's an environmental accident, if there's a um, accident at work that's severe, let's say an unexpected death in the OR or high degree of level of falls, if you have injuries or issues in the workplace, OSHA will come and figure out what's causing this. Are you following the safety standards or not? Okay. Occupational environmental nurses play many, many roles. Okay. They can be a case manager. Case manager is a really important role with this type of nursing because there's so many moving parts. So let's say somebody gets hurt on the job. They have to remember, a case manager is the coordinator of care. So think of everything that needs to be coordinated if somebody's hurt on the job. Workers' comp, insurance, following up with doctors, replacing the employee in the workplace if they can't work, making sure when they return to work if they can come back on limited disability, making sure they're retrained again if they need to be. Okay. What if the on-the-job injury was due to substance abuse or mental illness? They're working with that area too. So, like I said, it's a critical role in the healthcare team in these big organizations. Okay. They may be working with human resources to try and get the employee family medical leave. Another role that occupational environmental nurses have is a lot of times they're counseling and involved in crisis intervention. I mean, think about it. We spend a third of our work, a third of our life at work. People do have issues with substance abuse and mental illness. There are people that are going to bring those to work, right? So maybe the occupational nurse or environmental health nurse is the one who does those interventions. Maybe she refers to everybody's heard of an employee assistance program, EAP, right? So she's trying to coordinate that. What kind of resources would best assist this employee with whatever they have going on? Substance abuse, mental illness, work-related injury, or family-related problems. Okay. Another role that they have is health promotion and risk reduction. Okay, so they're trying to be proactive, preventative. They may be doing classes, providing information on healthy lifestyle, healthy eating, healthy exercise programs. I know in the big school district I just got finished working in, we had a whole health and wellness department that was under the occupational health department. They had all sorts of games or not games, but competitions from school to school about who walks the most, who goes on, you know, if you've been screened for obesity, what school of all the staff that signed up, who lost the most weight. Take classes on healthy lifestyles, healthy eating, parenting, all those things. Okay, trying to help employees try to find the best sense of balance with personal, with health, with family, with work. Okay, offering smoking cessation programs, maybe immunizations for the kids, exercise, fitness, stress management. Okay, so here's where OSHA comes in. So there are state and federal regulations put forward by OSHA. OSHA stands for Occupational Safety and Health Administration that affect the workplace. Okay. We as employers or where we work must be in compliance with these regulations of the laws and the guidelines within our workplace. Okay. So as an occupational or environmental health nurse, not only are you trying to be proactive, but you also have to have knowledge of the job descriptions within your organization. I mean, think about a hospital. Think about all the different roles in a hospital. You have doctors, nurses, CNAs, food services, environmental services, transport services, and so on. They all have a different job description. So that occupational health nurse has to be aware of those job descriptions. So anybody ever started a new job and you get a visit in your orientation from the occupational health department where they want to do training on safety and PPE and lifting, proper lifting technique. Those are all trying to be preventative to prevent workplace injuries. Okay. Do you work in an environment that is loud, really loud noises? Let's say a car plant. Are you wearing your earphones? Right? To prevent hearing damage. Let's say you work in an environment that's extreme heat or extreme cold. What precautions must be taken to prevent workplace injuries? What if you work in an environment that requires lifting? Do you properly know how to lift? so as to prevent back injuries? Do you work in an environment that has chemicals or toxins? Have you been educated if there is a spill, what you do? Or if you're handling these substances, what's the protection you need? Okay. So that's kind of an overall picture of environmental health, but let's see what we have on our notes here. Some more specific. Okay, so the nurse will conduct an assessment of the workplace, learn about job descriptions, learn about processes, learn where things are stored, learn about potential hazards, learn about the practices of employees. That's all observed to try and ensure effectiveness and safety, especially with the equipment. Okay. The occupational nurse realizes that there are a multitude of diseases, injuries that can occur within the workplace. Okay. And what I want you to remember is no environment, no workplace is risk-free. So every workplace, whether it's a fast food place, whether it's a bank, whether it's a hospital, whether it's a gym, any place of employment is under OSHA guidelines. And any place of employment has its risks. What if you walk into a bank and they don't have the appropriate maintenance staff to put ice on a sidewalk after a snowstorm and somebody slips? Right? What if I'm just going out there thinking of where you wouldn't typically think of occupational health? What about if you're working in what's my favorite place? In-N-Out Burger, right? And they don't have the appropriate mats on the floor and somebody slips, or they don't have the appropriate precautions for cooking on a hot stove and somebody's burned. Okay. What about in a hair salon or a nail salon? Right? Do you get where I'm coming from? Every single workplace has its risks. Okay. We talked about the roles. We talked about case management and how important it is. Counseling, crisis intervention. People bring their stuff to work, do they not? Do we all work with people who have lots of issues going on outside the workplace? And sometimes it can be difficult for them to focus and do their job accurately. Those are the employees that are more at risk for injury on the job, whether it's injury to self or injury to a client or a patient. Okay. The goal is health promotion. That's OSHA. Worker and workplace hazard detection. Yep. So the occupational health nurses recognize and identify hazards. You go through the nursing process, you recognize a hazard. You come up with whatever the problem is. What are the goals? What do you need to, let's say you have all of a sudden in the last 3 months, you have an increased number of back injuries on the stroke unit. What might you do? Maybe some retraining with those employees on proper lifting techniques, because now you've got half the staff out with a back injury, right? So here's a couple of examples of prevention levels. So primary, teaching coping mechanisms for people that have troubles outside of the workplace, providing healthy diet and education, maybe educating on proper lifting, educating on how to use PPE properly. An example of secondary here, screening for hearing loss. Let's say like I said, you work in a noisy plant. Maybe you want to do routine hearing tests for these employees. All right. Maybe blood pressure screening. If you have, I know in the big organizations, they do like health fairs. You get to go do blood pressure screening and blood sugar screening and, and get information on exercise programs, smoking cessation programs. Okay. And then how do you screen for stress and burnout? I mean, we've all seen our share of workplace violence, have we not? That is real. People bring their stuff to work. They just don't have the appropriate resources or coping strategies or whatever resources they need to handle what's going on outside the workplace.
Yeah, that's why they got mental health days now.
Yeah. I mean, the increase in workplace violence incidents is through the roof, which is why this occupational nurse, environmental health nurse plays such a critical role. Okay, let's think of a couple of tertiary interventions here. So something has happened. Something has happened at work. Let's say you've been injured. Okay, so tertiary prevention may include working with the employee to come back on limited duty. Maybe working with the employee and the employer trying to find a suitable place for that employee to work because they can't lift yet. Okay? Make sense? Environmental health. I know we talk about the two together, but there's also some specifics with environmental health. We know that environmental health hazards, just like I said at the beginning, think about your own environment. For me, I take for granted my air is healthy. I take for granted the water I drink is healthy. I take for granted that the old house that I live in wasn't built on a nuclear waste site. I take for granted that when I go to a restaurant or go get takeout food or whatever, that the people who prepared my food and served my food know how to prepare it safely, know how to serve it safely. Everybody's using, all those signs in the bathrooms, employees must wash their hands. Well, what about everybody wash their hands? Okay, those are, for me, personally speaking, those are things I just take for granted. Everybody's doing their job the way they're supposed to be. That's not always the case, right? We know that environmental hazards are responsible for 1/2 the total burden of disease. They contribute to over 80%. Environmental hazards alone, 80% of communicable disease of communicable and non-communicable diseases and injuries. So anybody ever seen the movie Erin Brockovich? With Julia Roberts. Erin Brockovich it's an older movie. If you ever get a chance to watch it, it's fabulous. It's in a small town in Texas that lives near a river. And a big PG&E gas company, oil company from California dumps hazardous waste into the water. And all these people in this small town, kids, elderly, everybody's getting all these weird cancers. So she hooks up with an attorney and they start investigating. Well, as it turns out, this company was fined millions and millions of dollars for contamination that they knew about. That is a movie about an environmental disaster. Look what happened in Flint, Michigan with the water contamination. And we have environmental risks all around us. We know that kids are much more vulnerable to environmental hazards. I always think of the toddler running around pulling paint chips off a windowsill, putting them in their mouths. Right? Toddlers are so close to the ground, they pick up everything and put it in their mouth. Right? Lead poisoning is huge for kids. If you're living, is it 1978, I think it is, or 1972? If you're living or going to school or in buildings that are built before 78, the risks of lead poisoning or lead exposure, it's like the asbestos, right? Fortunately, everything built since then had very strict codes. Go ahead. Okay. And we know that environmental hazards to everybody, but especially children, are more likely to produce poor health outcomes. Okay. Whoops. And then think about a pregnant mom who's exposed to environmental hazards, right? Let's say her family members work in a chemical plant and they come home. What do we want them to do? Get all their clothes off before they even enter the house, right? We don't want to expose that pregnant mom, right? Think of all the hazardous materials we have in our home, in our garages. Think of all the cleaning supplies. Think of all the gardening things, weed killers, whatever. Are those properly secured so the kids can't get into it? Think about all the cleaning supplies you have underneath your kitchen sink, wide open. Okay, so anyway, I don't mean for everybody to go run and clean under their kitchen sink, but you got to think about it. Think about all the environmental toxins and potential risks that are all around us. So environmental health in general, maybe it's determined by genetics, socioeconomic status, environmental exposures. So why would socioeconomic status influence environmental health? Well, if you're living in poverty, you're much more likely to be exposed to environmental hazards, maybe due to crowded living conditions, maybe living near a hazardous waste or a dump, maybe not having huge grocery stores and having poor quality foods available. Maybe you're living in an environment that has the jobs are more hazardous. Maybe you're living in older homes that may have some lead-based paint still there. Maybe you're living in a town that has old schools. I can tell you in the big district I worked in Denver, I mean, yeah, we had 200 schools, but I would say half of those were built in the 60s. So there was always maintenance going on at these schools. Okay. Maybe there's a genetic predisposition. Maybe there's asthma is passed on from generation to generation, or autism or developmental delays. That's what we mean by genetics. So how do we assess the risk? Okay, I'm down here at this bottom bullet. Assessing a patient for environmental risks requires nursing process. We need to find out where they live, where they work, where they go to school, where they send their kids to school. Where do you guys go to school? Dietary history. What if they live near waterways and they're fishing for their food? What if they eat a ton of fish because that's how they obtain their whatever? Fish has high mercury, right? Which is unhealthy. We need to be aware of that. Okay. So if you're the community nurse and you're doing a community assessment, I don't know if I've talked about the term windshield survey. Have you heard of a windshield survey? It's where you're the community nurse, so you're going around observing your community through your windshield. You're driving around, you're in a bus, maybe you're walking your dog, I don't know, that's how you observe. It's called windshield, right? Where you're observing out what this community has for environmental risks. Okay? Is it factories, their dump sites, transportation routes, airports? What's the housing look like? Is the city clean or dirty? There's trash laying all around. Is there a high crime rate? What about in rural areas? Do they spray pesticides? And then we already talked about here the lead-based paint before 78. Kids eat paint chips. Okay, it's important to find out, have you done any renovation? You live in an old house, have you done any renovations? And if there is lead found to be in the house, how do you help educate them on, once you do your renovations, don't be using paint that has lead in it, which there really isn't much around of that anymore. Okay. And exposure, like we said, to pregnant moms, maybe premature birth, learning disabilities. Let's see. We talked about all the different, now you're responsible for all these notes. I'm just skimming through it. 30 million Americans drink water that don't meet the EPA's safe drinking standards. 30 million. And the quality of water is tied to the quality of soil. The four things we think about with environmental risks are air, water, soil, and food. So 30 million Americans don't have safe drinking water. How about 50% of Americans live in an area where the air quality doesn't meet the standards? What if you live near a highway and there's all this traffic? Well, cars and trucks are the greatest source of air pollution, burning fossil fuels, power plants, waste incinerators, dump sites. And we know that pollution is associated with asthma, cardiovascular disease, cancer, immune system issues. And then think about indoor air quality. That's affected by levels of carbon monoxide, dust, mold, pests, cleaning products. And then food contaminants. Salmonella. I'll never forget when my 5-year-old, who's now 29, got salmonella from eating at a restaurant and the chicken wasn't cooked. He was sicker than sick. He was in the hospital for 3 weeks. 5 years old. He got salmonella. When the health department tracked it back, there were like a dozen people that got sick, hospitalized. Okay. So how do we know that farmers and agriculture are harvesting within the limits, right? Or within the rules? How do we know that restaurants are preparing food with the preparation guidelines and serving food? Okay. Well, as consumers, we have the right to know. Those are what consumer confidence reports are. Okay. You can actually go into the EPA website and put your zip code in, and it will spit you out a general list of what are the environmental hazards in your zip code. I've already done that for me. Air pollution is the biggest. I live within a half mile of the biggest interstate going through Colorado, I-70. Goes all the way from the East Coast to the West Coast. Air pollution is my biggest environmental risk. Okay. Questions about both of those? Environmental or occupational. Does that give you a good overview of both of those? The next topic is barriers to learning. So now we're shifting to health education. Okay. Patient education is one of the most important roles of a nurse. You guys know that, right? We use education to promote health, prevent illness and injury, improve our behaviors, or try and improve the behaviors of our clients. All right. We try and teach the families and the clients how to care for themselves. right? Because we know that personal responsibility, if you own it and take personal responsibility, you're much more effective in making change and maintaining it. Okay, we know that education in general empowers people, empowers our clients with the knowledge and motivation for them to take personal responsibility. And as nurses, we are educating in every role we work in. And I would extend that out. As a nurse, I'm educating everybody, my family, my kids, my friends. Everybody comes to the nurse, right? Everybody comes to the nurse for advice. Doesn't have to be in the work setting. Okay. One of the biggest barriers to learning is literacy. Okay. And I don't say that condescendingly. There's a difference between high literacy and low literacy with regards to health. Most people are lay people. Okay. They don't understand the big words, the big medical and health words. Okay. What if the culture, what if you don't speak English? Nurses often deal with individuals and populations who are illiterate or have low literacy levels. They may be embarrassed to admit that they don't understand what you're teaching them, right? They may appear to understand what they really don't. You know, when you ever had your client do this, just keep shaking their head like they understand. Okay. One of the ways, a really good way to assess our client's ability to read and understand is to have them read, give them something printed. Okay. Have them read that and acknowledge, have them kind of read it and repeat to you what the instructions say. That's not condescending to do. That's you assessing their knowledge and comprehension. Does that make sense? It's not any good to just take their word for it. You know, I get it. You'll know. But in our today's nursing profession, we are dealing with barriers to learning every day. Language, comprehension, culture, right? We also have to understand, we have to assess the client's readiness to learn. Do you ever try and teach a client something that they don't want to learn or they're not interested in? Okay. Motivation plays a large role in effective learning, right? We have to move them. We have to motivate them so that they have a desire to return to some sort of independence or some sort of comfort level in caring for themselves. How do we do that? That's hard. You know, maybe going through how serious their condition is, how important their treatment is. Okay, so we know that patient education sessions will be more successful if the patient is comfortable and rested. Okay, minimum of interruptions. So we go off the cues of the patient, not what our schedule is. Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead. Somebody have a question?
You ain't muted, Crystal.
Oh. Come on, Crystal. So, what do they understand about their injury or disease or illness? What are their personal expectations? We have to sort all that out. Okay. What's interfering with their ability to be motivated to learn how to care for themselves? A lot of times it's a lack of self-confidence. I'll never be able to do that. I heard that from lots of kids that were recently diagnosed as diabetic. I'll never be able to give my own insulin shot. I'm scared. It's going to hurt. Okay. So you have to explore those feelings. Okay? Motivate them, encourage them. You will be able to do it. Increase their self-esteem, their self-confidence. Praising them, encouraging them. Okay? So we know Healthy People 2030 has many objectives related to education. These objectives can be used to prevent conditions, reduce risks for illness, and promote healthier lifestyles. That's what education is all about. And then we need to understand how people learn. We, as nurses, have to modify our techniques to meet the needs of the family in front of us or the family we're working with. Okay, so people learn in 3 ways. And this is this bullet right here. Okay, they learn visually through visual learning, what they see. They learn auditorially, what they hear. And then kinesthetically is actually hands-on performing the task. Right? So my new little diabetics, they were hands-on. I made them play with their monitor and know how to use it. I made them learn how to dial their insulin pen and give themselves a shot. So you need to understand your audience. Okay? And then for all of us, we all have 3 different domains of learning. 3 different parts of us: cognitive, affective, and psychomotor. Okay, so the cognitive part of us is the thinking part of us. Okay, the ability to read information, understand it, memorize it. Okay, the affective is the feeling part of, we all possess all these 3, right? The affective, the feeling part of it. What's my attitude? What's my feeling? What's my belief? What's my values towards this topic? That makes a difference. If you don't believe in what you're teaching, it's going to be hard to get that across. And then we all have psychomotor learning as well. It's the moving part. It's the practice. Okay, psychomotor is practicing, hands-on. It's easier to use a glucometer if you're practicing with it in your hands than watching somebody else. Okay,
Sometimes it's good to.
What?
For some people, it's good to see them all. I'm one I gotta see, hear it, and do it.
Okay. Okay, perfect. I'm a psychomotor learner. If I have a problem with my TV or my phone, I'm old. I can't figure this crap out. I call my kids and they try and talk to me over the phone. Well, mom, okay, press. It's like, no, come over and show me how to do it or do it for me. I can't take technical directions over the phone. And maybe that's just my own, I don't feel like learning it. I don't want to. That's what these kids are for. They've grown up with electronics, right? So I'm psychomotor, hands-on. And we all possess these 3, and all the people we're going to be working with possess these 3, but you got to know your audience. Are these cognitive thinkers? Are these affective thinkers? Are these psychomotor thinkers? There's a lot with patient education. I mean, let's say you educate 10 clients in one day. You're the discharge nurse. You're educating one client that has stroke, one that has cardiovascular disease, one that has a kid with asthma, one that has an elderly grandparent that's a fall risk. Think about it. Think about all the different things you have to think about to meet the needs of each one of those clients and their families. Make sense? Okay, how do we reinforce health education? So it's really important that we work collaboratively with a team, that all the disciplines are involved. So my husband, Tom, his son has been in the hospital for 4 months. Okay, he came home Friday. That's all I've heard about the last 2 weeks, and I've been intimately involved working with the caseworker, only because I wanted to make sure everything was covered. Okay. That caseworker had to coordinate everything: insurance, home health, medical equipment, family support. Okay. It's a team approach. Okay. Everybody plays a part in a successful discharge. Okay. Everybody's responsible for a certain part. And when we all come together and work collaboratively, speech therapy, PT, respiratory, the patient is in a lot better position. And it took a lot of work. This case manager, man, she had tons of things to coordinate before the actual discharge happened. Well, she actually started working on this. Hey, when do we start planning for discharge?
As soon as they come in the door.
Bingo. Right? The discharge planning. Planning, obviously, we need to plan what the ongoing needs might be at home. Begins at the time of admission. Do they have special needs? Do they have language barriers? Do they have literacy issues? Who's going to take care of them? What do we have to teach the family? Okay, so here's some examples of education levels of interventions with education. So primary, maybe teaching a woman to void before and after sex to prevent cystitis, teaching parents how to role model healthy eating, educating parents on immunization, the schedule for immunization, what diseases are prevented, or why we're getting the immunizations. Maybe with secondary, remember secondary was screening. Maybe we're teaching an elderly woman the signs and symptoms of a UTI, self-screening, providing education on a preparation for a colonoscopy, right? Giving a pamphlet on the importance of scheduled pap smears. Do you understand why that's secondary? It's screening. And then tertiary, they have to have something going on: illness, disease, condition, injury. So maybe we're teaching a low sodium diet to a client that has hypertension. Maybe we're demonstrating the use of a glucometer for a diabetic. Maybe we're providing a pamphlet to the diabetic about signs and symptoms of hyper and hypoglycemia. Maybe we're discussing on a home health visit what the potential side effects are for prescribed medication that they're taking for a condition. Okay. So anybody ever worked, this is my last comment. Has anybody ever worked with somebody that has said, yeah, I know that's a new way to do things, but and it's probably going to lessen the patient's stay by a couple of days, but you know what? Let's just keep doing it the same old way. It works. Anybody work with somebody like that? Where just changes, they don't want it. Learning has not occurred until your behavior has changed. Behavioral changes are hard. It's human nature to migrate towards the path of least resistance, including habitual behaviors. Okay? So if you're in that situation, it's going to be extra challenging to know your audience, how they learn. Ask them as part of your assessment, how do you learn best? This is what we have to accomplish as far as teaching and discharge teaching. How do you suggest we approach it? What do you, the client, want to do? Make sense? So there's our content for this week. You okay with all that? Okay. All right. I've opened quiz 3. Are we on 3? or four? Oh, four. We're doing four today. All right. I've opened quiz four for you. Let's see. It's 4 o'clock. Let's take 15 minutes. 4:15. I don't need to know when you're done. You got to stay on camera. If you have to go run to the bathroom, fine. But don't log out and log on again. Just 15 minutes to do it, and then we'll review it. Okay. So everybody should be able to access it, and everybody needs to stay on camera to do this. Okay. Please stay on camera. All right. I'm going to mute myself. Maybe everybody mute themselves. Are we all getting done? Can you raise your hand if you're still working? Crystal, how much were you at? Okay, Crystal, you done? Okay, great. All right, let's review this. What'd you think? Did you do good? Okay, let's go through the questions. Okay. Feel free to jump in. Okay, which statement is true? Which statement is true regarding children with environmental hazards? What did we talk about in class?
That they so little to the ground.
They're
They got a
close.
risk of picking up stuff, eating stuff.
Yep. Everybody get that right? Okay. Good job. During a home health visit for a pregnant client, the nurse notices the husband regularly uses pesticides at work. Which nursing intervention is a priority? It's the important word here. This is a good example of a question that may have more than one right answer if you didn't pick up the word priority. Okay, so if there's more than one right answer, you got to go back and look at the question and see if there was a word or a cue that you missed. So, what's the correct answer?
Have the husband remove clothes outside and don't let the wife handle them.
Yep. Yep. Right? You could do A, you could do or B, you could do C, D. They all could be correct, I guess. But what's the priority? Okay, A is the priority. Okay, the home health nurse works in a community where there is high rates of chronic complex illnesses and neurological disorders. Which environmental characteristic is priority? Again, another important word.
Isn't the president of several
See,
manufacturing plants?
Yep. Presence of several manufacturing plants near the community's river. Right?
I almost missed that one though.
That's what that Aaron Brockovich movie is about.
Right. But what do you think of the use of water fill? I was thinking of water at first when I was looking at the bottom, so I'm glad that I thought twice about that.
Yeah, well, I mean, look at the beginning of the question. High rates of complex chronic illnesses and neurologic disorders. That's a pretty broad spectrum. Okay, so that could be because of manufacturing plants along the river, maybe like in the movie, they're dumping hazardous waste into the water. Nurse is reinforcing education about the diabetic diet. Which client statement indicates a barrier to learning? So what kind of question is this? Is this a positively asked question or a negatively asked question?
They want a barrier, negatively asked question, right?
Right, because you're looking for something. Which client statement indicates a barrier to learning? Okay, what do they say that raises a red flag to you?
I think I would rather.
Yeah, because after all your teaching, you're reinforcing your education about a diabetic diet. Then they say, I think I'd rather use a keto diet instead of this one. Well, they need more teaching, right? Because a keto diet is not recommended for diabetics, right? If they tell you English is my primary language, great. I'm familiar with the medical terminology, great. I'm ready to learn things I need to change, great. But no, you don't use a keto diet. So do you understand why that's the answer? Which nursing intervention will enhance the learning for a client who speaks English as a second language?
I would say create a pamphlet in the primary language.
Absolutely. Absolutely. In their primary language. Okay. If you provide a recording of the teaching for them to view later, it's still not in their primary language, right? If you include the family in the teach back session, it's not in their primary language. And of course, we're not going to give a client a dictionary to learn vocabulary, right? So if you print something out in their primary language, that's going to enhance their learning. I mean, think about it. How many times do you make phone calls now for one, press English, for two, press Spanish, for three, press Russian, for four, press whatever? Okay. Question 6. The home health nurse is reinforcing education on the use of a glucometer. Which approach would be the most effective?
You want to the demonstration of using the glucometer and then observe the client return and demonstrate.
Right, right. That's that psychomotor learning, right? Hands-on. I mean, it's asking which would be most effective. You could provide a pamphlet describing the functions and the features of the glucometer, sure. You could refer the client to a support group, create a video, sure. But which would be most effective? It's that hands-on. Got it? Home health nurse is reinforcing education for an 8-year-old with type 1. Which will be the most effective? Think growth and development here.
A.
Hey.
It's like I was going between teach the parents rather than the child, but then
I have 8-year-olds in schools that are independent. They give their own
that's
shots.
what I was thinking about too. I was like, maybe they don't want nobody else to give them their shots because it's more easy and comfortable for them too.
Right, right.
They'll be less scared.
Right. I mean, certainly the adult in the room is second checking them, looking at how much they've drawn up in the syringe or how much they've dialed into their pen or what their pump settings are. We're looking at it, double checking them, right? But a lot of times we teach injections of whatever, but with pillows, with toys, with dolls. Your doll's going to get a shot, right? They don't do well. An 8-year-old won't do well with a long comprehensive session. We don't want to just teach the parents. I mean, we will teach the parents alongside the child, right? And 8-year-olds are not going to read written pamphlets. Okay. Which nursing intervention is a priority for a client who is not motivated to learn?
You want to establish that trust and the rapport prior to attempting the education.
Right. Establishing trust and rapport is not only critical for education. We talked about this last week. It's critical for working with the special vulnerable populations as well. The homelessness, substance abuse, mental illness, teen pregnancy. Establishing trust and rapport in our nursing profession is first and foremost. I mean, think about it. When you go meet a client for the first time, or you've got your assignment and you're done with report and you're going out on the floor. I mean, think about what you do at the beginning, meet and greet and how are you? And, if a client sees you coming into the room with a smile on your face and how are you today? And what can we do to help you? I mean, that's establishing rapport. Okay. Occupational health nurse is caring for a client who reports lower back pain that's worse at the end of the workday. Which intervention is a priority? Again, what's the most important?
You want to assess that lifting technique for the safe body mechanics.
Right. Well, there's cues in the question. They report lower back pain. It's at the end of the workday. All right. So we want to make sure that we do an assessment on what their lifting techniques are. We don't know what's going on, so we would definitely not provide a list of massage therapists or recommend them to go get any medication, right? And we're not in the position to do a referral to an expert medical evaluation. We don't know what's going on. But based on what they tell us, let's see how they lift. Okay, which statement is true regarding the scheduling of client education?
Should be scheduled and most comfortable.
Right. We talked about this in our health education part. Okay, it's not up to us to decide when it's most convenient for us. We should be asking the patient, we need to do your discharge teaching today. Let me know what a good time is for that. Maybe you want to wait for your family to be here or your caretaker. What would be the best time to do it? Okay. So there you go. Any questions? So you've learned several new things about community health today, what occupational health is, what environmental health and hazards are, occupational hazards. What's the best way to go about teaching? What are some barriers to teaching? How to motivate your clients? How to provide the most effective teaching tools to your clients. And everybody's going to be different. Every client, every family member, everybody's going to have different needs. Okay.
I think my biggest barrier was just one, slowing down and then making sure I read what the question is asked, because this wording is with yours, but I understand it makes you really do critically think, but it's just slowing down. Like, what is this saying? What is the key points? But I can't get caught up into how much time I got left. But now I'm understanding it's kind of coming off better each time.
Well, these are clinical questions. This is taking your knowledge and putting into the clinical setting. Teaching somebody with diabetes. These are all clinical questions. And that's what I'm trying to get you to do. Is take your knowledge and then care for a patient with whatever we've talked about. Okay. And remember, I've said this before, if for all you overthinkers, if the information that you've got in your brain is not in the question, then it doesn't exist. Just use the information in the question. Don't think, well, what if that family member, or what if 6 months ago this happened? It's not in the question. Everything you need to answer the question correctly, all the information you need is in the question. Yes, there's some information in questions that is completely irrelevant. Sure. That's why you got to pick apart. What do I need to know? Okay. All right. That's all I have for today. Try and get to a review session if you can. If you can't, we'll send the recordings. I'll send mine Wednesday. We'll send out Professor Ford's Thursday and Professor Kershaw's Sunday. I'll try and get hers out Sunday night because you guys take the exam on Monday. Okay. And again, just go to your concept guide, review that. It's a summary of everything we've covered in the last 3 weeks. It's a good summary of what you need to know that's covered on the exam. Okay. This will be fine. Okay. You know where to reach me. If anybody still needs to schedule with me, send me some days and times. Okay. And I hope you guys have a great rest of the week.
You too. Thanks for
You
everything.
too. Have a good day.
Yeah, you guys have a great day too. Thank you.
Thanks. Have a